and thanks for staying on LN 24/7. This is Politics Now. My name is Morno Balagbobo. Today we've got a quite interesting show for you. We will be focusing our lens on the Boko Haram insurgency. Can you believe it's 15 years after the first attack right here in Nigeria? Well, let's give you a rundown of our talking points. First, we'll look at the recent Borno military base attack and why insurgency still persists in the northeast. And finally, ending terrorism in Nigeria. I guess tonight is the right person to speak to, Sir Lebari Undu Sampson. He's a security expert, a retired director of security, INEC, right here in Abuja, and a member of the Institute of Industrial Security and Safety of Nigeria. Well, away from that, today on the show, we'll be looking at Trump's first week in office. It's been a roller coaster from one executive order to the next. Tuesday's executive orders, talking about domestic restrictions for federal civil servants in this country, has sparked a lot of reactions from Democrats and the like. We will be looking at some of those, but also the global ramifications of some of his executive orders. So let's run through the talking points. Reversing Biden's policies. That's one of the major goals of President Trump, and also attacking the deep state. And finally, international order disruption. What does that mean? Well, our guest Chetam Thierry Mwala, political analyst, Pan-Africanist, chartered mediator, procurement expert, activist, and lawyer, will be helping us make sense of all of this. Well, don't go anywhere. Let's take a quick breather. We'll be right back to break it down. Thanks for staying with us. So let's get right to our first conversation. Boko Haram insurgency, 15 years after. Now let's start with what happened on Tuesday. The Senate called on Nigerians to rally behind the army in its fight against terrorism. The Red Chamber made the plea in a statement issued by the Chairman Senate Committee on Army, Abdulaziz Yaradua, APC Katsina Central. While commending the army for its bravery in the campaign against terrorism, the committee noted that collective support for the troops will go a long way in making the country safer for habitation of Nigerians and citizens of other nations of the world. And I read in quote, it says, "We extend our deepest condolences to the families of the personnel who made the ultimate sacrifice during this operation. The nation is forever grateful for their bravery and selfishness. The Nigerian Army's commitment to maintaining peace and security in the northeast and other parts of the country is truly commendable." Now, this is coming on the heights of the recent attack of the Nigerian military base in Borno State. Not two, but 22 soldiers, including a commander, were killed in an attack at the military base in Malam Fatori at Abadam local government area in Borno State. Malam Fatori is a border town 2 kilometers from the Nigerian border community Boso. Sources reported that the attackers who stormed the Malam Fatori military base wreaked havoc for several hours on Friday, 24th January, before dislodging the 149 Battalion. Survivors of the deadly attack reportedly fled to safety. Intelligence sources confirmed that the insurgents arrived at the base in multiple gun trucks, razing several buildings and military operational vehicles during the assault. The 149 Task Force Brigade, Malam Fatori, is located 2 kilometers from the Nigerian border town of Boso in Lake Chad, where the insurgents are currently hibernating. The military base happened when troops were on routine operations in the Timbuktu Triangle, from where they drove into an ambush that resulted in the death of the commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Alari. Now, the defense headquarters said the incident came during a clearance operation at the renowned terrorist stronghold enclave, Timbuktu Triangle. He said the three-pronged operation was aimed at dismantling the terrorist presence with a triangle, and this began on the 16th of January to 25th. Edward Buba said the troops killed over 70 terrorists, including some of their commanders during the operations. So this is to present some of the successes of the Nigerian military. But the HQ said the success was despite the terrorists deploying improvised explosive devices, IEDs, person-borne improvised explosive devices, suicide bombers, as well as vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices, suicide bombers in explosive vehicles to ward off troops' advance and attacks. Now, in July, 7 troops were killed when their vehicle hit a landmine in a village where the Islamic State of West Africa province is active. The 15-year-old conflict has killed 40,000, that's right, 40,000, and displaced around 2 million from their homes in the northeast. The violence spilled into neighboring Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, leading to the creation of a regional force to fight the militants. Now, recently, General Christopher Musa, the Chief of Defense Staff, was shedding more light on the prolonged battle against terrorism in Niger's northeast in Channels TV's Politics Today program, and he explained why the military efforts to eradicate the Boko-Haram terrorist group have taken so long. Now, he said in that interview, pointing out issues such as the group's adaptability, its use of asymmetrical warfare tactics, and the region's challenging terrain. And he emphasized that despite these obstacles, the military remains committed to ending insurgency and restoring peace. But are all these talking points from the Chief of Defense Staff, are they valid? Our guest tonight joins us, Lebari Ndu Sampson, security expert from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you so much, Sir Sampson, for being with us on Politics Now.
You're welcome.
So let's make the case of what happened in Borno State. Now, we're not making a case, but we're examining what happened. What are your thoughts on the recent attacks in Borno State and the government's commitment to end insurgency in Nigeria?
It is a two-faced problem. One, what we are told is not what is being done. And the things that are supposed to be done that are not done is causing this problem. Remember, General Sani Abacha of blessed memory said, if an insurgency succeeds 48 hours after it started, then you should know that the hand of the military is in it. And we have always seen it. Most of the attacks of our military is done by spies within the military. You cannot enter a man's house and know where he keeps his money, except somebody in the house tells you where it is. There are people who are deriving benefits in terms of personal aggrandizement and what they can get, not because they don't love their people, but because they love themselves more than their people. And that's the problem the elite and the leadership recruitment process in Nigeria has always given us. That's one. Two, unless and until the people decide to take their destiny in their hands, it will continue to happen because it is the common people that serve as informants to these people. So unless and until there is a massive reorientation of the people to make them understand that they are gaining nothing, rather they are deceiving and destroying themselves and the ecosystem, it will not stop.
So, Sampson, are you saying the military is lying?
You know, in every setup, they will always tell us what they want us to hear and not exactly what happens, particularly when it concerns security of life and property. There are certain things that they say. If they come out and say it openly, the people will revolt. So they have to manage it. That's what is called managing information. They have to manage information they are giving to us, just so that we'll be contented with it. But that's not actually the crux of the matter. The crux of the matter is that our leadership recruitment process over the period of time has not given us what me and you want. Leaders that will be accountable, leaders that will be responsible, leaders that will take responsibility for what they have done, either correctly or incorrectly. That's what we need.
Now, when you look at the issue of accountability, would you say this administration is active enough in having the military explain further? What do you know that you can tell us? And by explaining further, I'm talking about accountability.
Well, I think the problem we have is, like I said, we are not being responsible to ourselves. There's a tiny cabal in every system, not just this administration. There's always a tiny untouchable cabal who do things their own way and will want us to believe that they are doing it the other way. Remember in my opening statement of General Abacha that if insurgency persists after 48 hours, then the hand of the military is involved. 15 years down the line, we are crying, we are suffering. It affects everybody, not just us, it also affects them. But the difference between them and us is that they have the resources to move to wherever they want to move, do whatever they want to do, and leave us at the battlefront to be used as cannon fodder of the military. Check the people, the gun they are buying. Check the military hardware they are buying. Is it the correct one? Is it the one that is working? Or is it the one that will make our soldiers, gallant as they are, to suffer? Let me just tell you something. The Nigerian military, including the police, when they go out for a contingent force in United Nations or ECOMOG, they perform excellently. So why can't they perform excellently in their own home? That shows that there's a disconnect between the leadership and the followership. And until that disconnect is to the mutual advantage of all, we will try but will not achieve, we will not get to the promised land. That's my take on it.
Now, what do you make of the statement of the Chief of Staff saying terrorism is sponsored by foreign elements? Do you agree with that narrative based on all the politicization of the issue of insecurity in the country?
Yes, they are not just, it's not just saying it. That's a fact. It's one of the greatest factors we have impeding the fight against insurgency. But the question we'll ask is, these foreigners, do they just come and recruit these people to do the fighting? They recruit through a process. Who are the linkages? What are our people doing? Check, for instance, when we say they do it, yes, they do it for economic benefit. Go to Zamfara, go to Sokoto, go to Kebbi, go to Plateau. Look at the mining that is going on. Who are the people sponsoring it? Who are the people who are their fronts? Who are the people covering it? There are internal saboteurs in the leadership cadre. Not all, I must say it. We still have enough patriotic Nigerians. But when their efforts are sabotaged, that's where we are. So what we should do as a people and as a nation and as a government is to be open to ourselves and look at the things, the intrinsic factors and values that are destroying our nation. What are the things destroying our nation? Wealth without work. That's the most important thing destroying our nation. Wealth without work. We want to be rich, but we don't want to work hard for it. And unless and until that factor is tackled, and it is not just a top-bottom approach, it has to be a bottom-top approach methodology that will be used for these things. The Chief of Defense Staff is right. The money they get, who gives it to them? They are doing that to protect interest. They are doing that to destabilize our economy so that we can continue to be borrowing, we can continue to be begging. Nigeria is rich enough. with material resources, with men, with everything that we have to stand on his own. Look at it, Burkina Faso of yesterday. They have developed their own electric car, and yet we are here. If we had followed on what Professor Awojobi did in University of Lagos, that car he manufactured in the Second Republic, if we had followed it up and patented it and make it today, we would have been somewhere. Every nation we are talking about started from somewhere. So where are we starting from? That's our problem. The Chief of Defense Staff is right, but the leadership of the country has to look inwards. Look inward, because an outsider will not come to your house to know where you keep crayfish if an insider has not told him or her, this is where the crayfish is kept. That's my take.
Now, sir, you make it look as though it's all about weapons. What is the role of intelligence, and is the Nigerian military up to par with global intelligence in terms of tackling terrorism?
I think the intelligence thing we are talking about, security is everybody's business. It's not just for the military or the security agencies. What are we as a people doing? Do we give them the correct intelligence? Do we give them what will benefit us in the long run? Or we are looking at stomach infrastructure in terms of intelligence gathering and sharing? That's the problem. It behoves us as a people to do that which will give our children and our great-grandchildren what we see in other climes. They can be here. And I can tell you without fear of equivocation that Nigeria can raise its head anywhere in the world when it comes to knowledge, when it comes to capacity, when it comes to doing the right thing. But the problem we have here is we started on the wrong note, and we have refused to see the wrong note and correct it. We still think that as it was in the beginning is now and never shall be. No, the world is changing. They won't wait for us. They will keep moving, and we'll keep following them. But we are not even following them at a pace that is commensurate with what we have. There's no country in the world today that you go to and you will not see Nigerians in the forefront of development, in the forefront of management, in the forefront of scholarship. Anything you can think about. Is it in medicine? Is it in engineering? They are there. Every day they kept getting awards. So why can't we harness these resources back home? Keep a think tank and do what we want to do. We don't need to advertise. Intelligence is not what you just go out to do. You gather it. You sit down, you analyze it, you sterilize it, and you take the chaps and throw them away and look at the ones that will benefit you. And each and every Nigerian has a role to play in intelligence gathering, sharing, and using it.
Okay, sir. So 15 years of Boko Haram insurgency, you've made mention of cabals, but we're looking at how this has festered for this long. I mean, talking about from the time of Goodluck Jonathan, where the attacks were really rampant. Then throughout the 8 years of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, and even up till now, these same cabals have not been curtailed. Now, the reason I am calling this out is because of the president's stance on cabals. Anytime he's talking, he would always refer to the elites of the elites. Given his status, political status, right before he even came to power, and considering the fact that he weaponized, all the politics that you can think of to ensure that President Buhari, was elected as president and ruled Nigeria for 8 years. I mean, many Nigerians are asking why this so-called cabal have not been exposed and curtailed during his time, now that he's done 1 year past, governing the nation.
Well, it's not difficult to climb down on them. The problem is, have you seen a man who will destroy his farm so that he will please other people? The people we are talking about, are they not the cabals and members of the cabal? That takes us back to what I said, the leadership recruitment process. The people me and you know and me and you can trust and vouch for will never ever get near to positions of leadership and rulership. That's one. Two, there are people who are there with the mentality of acquiring wealth without work. And I said it here before, that once our orientation is fixed towards primitive accumulation without work, you know, it's Nigeria that we have millionaires and billionaires without a water sachet factory, briefcase millionaires who move from one place to the other, collecting contracts without executing it and collecting the money. And then they are giving chieftaincy title in their community. The church welcomes them. The mosque welcomes them. It's a whole lot that we need to start from the scratch. It is not easy, but it is also not undoable. We can do it. We can surmount it. Every country we are looking at today started from somewhere. We need to start it. And that's the reason why corruption thrives. Because people will take care of your being into office. And when they sponsor you to get into office, they expect dividends. That's what they call dividends of democracy. And that's why you see Godfather, Godson all over the country, everywhere. I put him here. He has neglected me. I put him here. I did this. Did you put him there for your benefit, or you put him there for the benefits of the people? The intellectuals, social critics, we also know helping matters because we praise who gives us butter. Is it only butter we will be chopping? We cannot continue to lick butter. China stayed in enclosures for hundreds of years. Today, everybody calls China, calls China. Have they known the sacrifices that was made for these people? They locked themselves. They didn't go out and develop themselves. Here, we would rather do what we call Niger, whatever. Keep people there for them to do immorality, and we'll clap and sponsor them. Have we ever collected brilliant science students, brilliant economics, and kept in an environment and asked them to face the challenges we have, giving them a period of time? Have we done that without getting results? No. There was a time was schools dedicated to excellence, secondary schools. Where are those children? Where are they today? Where are they kept? Because those who benefit from our suffering will not allow us. And I keep saying, until and unless Nigerians take their destiny in their hands, it will be a cul-de-sac, running around circle, concentric circle that takes us to nowhere.
So, Sampson, I'd like to take you back to something that you said that's very striking. You talked about residents of these communities that are prone to Boko-Haram attacks taking security into their own hands, because if they are waiting for the political class, they will be waiting in vain. But let's not go too far. We saw the emergence of the Lakura terrorist group. I mean, the people were the ones who were seeking to secure themselves by bringing Nigerians into the country. How has that led to any problem being solved, looking at the failure of government to fully curb this menace?
The government cannot be said to have failed, because if they have failed, then there will be nobody there. So they have not failed. What they have done is not to do it effectively as it should be done. And that brings me back to the same question that I've been talking about. When there are internal saboteurs for economic reasons, when they do what they do it with internal collaboration. And don't forget, we have been reduced to a level of poverty that anything that will buy us bread and water for that moment is accepted by the people. We have been so pauperized by our leaders that whatever they tell us, we take it as gospel truth. We take it as coming from God himself. Because what will they do? They give us something that will fill our stomach for that moment and make us not to think, unless and until we decide to do a reorientation of our people. And this is a collective mass reorientation. Everybody should be involved, both the leaders and the followers. Everybody who knows what is happening. Don't stay in your house and pontificate when you have the opportunity of doing that. How many people do this thing to do what they are supposed to get to the end? It has to start somewhere. It is not something that can go on everywhere all the time. No, it has to start somewhere. And that means that me and you, if we can educate our family, educate our friends, educate even those we consider as our enemies. One thing people have not taken into consideration is that our journey together in this world is too short. Nobody lives 200 years. So what are we amassing wealth for? All we need, yes, amassing wealth is good if it is legally done and if it is transparently done. But when you kill people because you want to be rich, because you want to export gold, you want to export diamond, you want to export oil, it is in all parts of this country. Solid minerals is everywhere, everywhere. But you see the way we do it. The cabals permeates all facets of the society. It is not in one place. If you come to my community, there are people who are there too, who continue to perpetuate wrongs and take people and give them peanuts. They give you 5,000 naira, you vote for them. And the next 4 years, how much, if you calculate and divide that 4,000 naira or 5,000 naira times the number of days in 4 years, they will amass all the wealth they can. And they will come back after 4 years to distribute peanuts. How many of the children's school here? How many of them go to hospitals here? Excuse me. How many of them enjoy the blackout we have? You can imagine Nigeria with all the sunshine and sunlight, with all the hydro dams, with all the things we have.
So Sampson, I want to thank you for your time and also for your advice to the government as to how to tackle insecurity, most especially Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria. Many thanks for staying with us, and we do hope to have you right here on the show.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Okay, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll move away from Nigeria to the foreign scene, this time to examine Trump's first week in office. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. This time around, we are moving to talk about President Trump. Yes, it is Trump's world at the moment. I'm sure you might be wondering, what am I saying? But look at the executive orders, the memorandums, and all that has been dished out from Washington, D.C. last week, even up till this week. I mean, it's got heads and tails, you know, just waggling, and people really, really talking about what this means for the whole world. Our talking points will reflect on Trump's efforts in reversing Biden's policies, secondly, attacking the deep state, and international order disruption. Our guest is no newbie when it comes to international global politics, Chetam Nwala. Thank you so much for being with us. I mean, we've just seen a whole lot that has gone on so far within the country, America, and some of the decisions. I mean, when you talk about America, we're talking about a global world power that's responsible, you know, for the world that we live in today. Well, but before we come to you, Thierry, to continue the conversation, just to bring us up to speed to some of the latest developments of President Trump. Well, do recall that President Trump promised to do a lot from the start if he got elected, and certainly Did he do all that he said, or he has started rather doing all that he said he was going to do? During his first week in office, Trump signed dozens of executive orders affecting everything from immigration, climate change, oil exploration to health and medical research, as well as eliminating federal diversity programs, directives defining gender, and so much more. President Trump on Tuesday started the freezing potentially of trillions of dollars in federal funding to Americans, impacting everything from education grants to small business loans and sparking accusations that he is violating the Constitution. Well, thankfully, we will be speaking to a barrister. The order was issued by the White House Budget Office in a memo a week into Trump's second term. Now, it was not clear in the memo signed by the acting director of the Office of the Management of Budget, Matthew Vaith, how such pause on disbursements of funding will work for and how long it will. Well, let's just bring you up to speed with some of Mr. Trump's executive orders. Now, we'll start with some in the United States. Now, some U.S.-based directives include review the investigative actions of the Biden administration to bar asylum for people newly arriving at the southern border, suspend the refugee admissions program, declare migrant crossings along the U.S.-Mexico border to be a national emergency, terminate DEI programs across the federal government, recognize two sexes, male and female, remove protections for transgender people in federal prisons. Now to tariffs and trade, he talked about, or he has proposed, pushed forward direct federal agencies to begin investigation into trade practices to order the government to assess the feasibility of creating an external revenue service to collect tariffs and duties. You go down to energy and environment, withdrew the United States from the Paris Agreement, a pact amongst all nations to fight climate change, declared a national energy emergency, a first in U.S. history, which could unlock new paths to suspend certain environmental rules or expedite permitting of certain mining projects. Now, others include the withdrawal from the World Health Organization, renaming Mount Denali and the Gulf of Mexico. Now, do recall that UN Chief Antonio Guterres on Monday expressed concern after the United States, the world's biggest foreign aid donor, froze virtually all assistance under President Donald Trump's new administration. Guterres said help was essential for the most vulnerable communities around the world, whose lives and livelihoods depend on this support. Now, some of the impact of pausing funding for the World Health Organization include development assistance to military aid, including Ukraine, pause of U.S. funding for PEPFAR, the anti-HIV/AIDS initiative that buys antiretroviral drugs to treat the disease in developing countries, largely here in Africa. Now, when we talk about the international order of things, it is not what it used to be. It is now Donald Trump's world. Nowhere was this more obvious than at the World Economic Forum latest meeting in Davos. And since the 1970s, the WEF has been an integral part of the liberal international order that emerged from the ashes of the Second World War. Trump, who was at the 55th Davos summit, made statements that ruffled feathers. Let's take a listen to what Donald Trump had to say.
As you probably know, by just reading any paper, my message to every business in the world is very simple. Come make your product in America, and we will give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth. We're bringing them down very substantially, even from the original Trump tax cuts. But if you don't make your product in America, which is your prerogative, then very simply you will have to pay a tariff, differing amounts, but a tariff which will direct hundreds of billions of dollars and even trillions of dollars into our treasury to strengthen our economy and pay down debt. Under the Trump administration, there will be no better place on earth to create jobs, build factories, or grow a company than right here in the good old USA. Already Americans' economic, you can see this, I think, maybe even in your wonderful, wonderful room that you're all gathered together, so many of my friends, but Americans, the economic confidence is soaring like we haven't seen in many, many decades, maybe not at all.
Enough talk. Our guest Chetam joins us right now from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you for being with us on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start from Tuesday's freezing of federal funding of AIDS in the United States. This cuts across the elderly and, of course, Medicaid established by Obama, although folks are saying it's not going to touch on that. But I do recall watching the press secretary of President Trump making some statements that it's not going to really affect all these things that the Democrats are crying that it will actually affect. So what do you make of some of the reactions globally to Trump's second term in office, rather?
Okay, first of all, let me say that some of the things happening in the United States today were largely expected because we saw it coming. We've had a taste, the world has had a taste of a Donald Trump presidency. We know what it looked like, and it didn't come to some of us as a surprise because we had expected some of these things to happen. And so we are also expecting him to go harder in the coming days on some of his policies, some of his actions and all that. And especially going ahead to sign over 35 executive orders in the last 1 week. It's something unprecedented and something that we know that he was already prepared for such a thing. So it's not coming to us as a surprise, but there are certain issues that have been posed and that he has decided to rescind on or to go back on that is giving us a lot of that is raising lots of concern. Things like foreign aid, both domestic and things like aids generally, not just foreign aids now, both foreign aids and domestic aids that has really created lots of reaction across the world. Now, a lot of countries rely so much on the United States. A lot of countries depend so much on them and on these aids for their survival, especially within the African continent and Asian continent. You see these things. So it would really hamper so much on our own existence, and it's really going to affect lots of these countries. But one of the good things is that before these foreign aids, before these things are actually actualized, it's going to take the next 3 to 6 months to getting it done before they are formalized and these aids will be completely stopped and all that. But one of the challenges you are going to be having is that it's going to make a lot of nations to be stranded with respect to some of the actions and some of the plans they already have, because you cannot execute some of these plans without the foreign aid, without these funds to get them done. We're also seeing that even within the U.S., aids for meals for elderly people have also been stopped. It is also affecting aids meant for meals for elderly people. And you see, a lot of persons are also crying out and saying that, see, you need to review this particular action. If there are specific nations, if there are specific countries that you want to stop this foreign aid from getting to, let us stop those specific countries. But taking it all out on everybody is really not a good one. But we are hoping that President Trump and this current administration will look at it and do a review of it. But I doubt if in the nearest future would have a review of it. They would have to go ahead to formalize it maybe through Congress and make sure that that is exactly what is happening and all that. We've seen, apart from the foreign aid, there are other decisions that have been taken in the last 1 week that is shaking the entire world, affecting the capital market, affecting the stock exchange of the world stock exchange and all that. So Donald Trump presidency, it's a whole new ball game we are experiencing that is coming to us. But the world has to brace up for it because more is yet to come.
Wow, that's quite a lot to unpack. But let's talk about the legal standing for some of these orders. Some of this funding will need to be were already actually approved by Congress. And they're ready, Democrats and some other organizations are ready to sue the federal government. And listening to Trump's press secretary, she said they're ready to go on with this and they're definitely going to win in court. But for you as a legal professional, how does this play out?
Now, when you look at the U.S. Congress as well as the Senate as of today, you would agree with me that the Republican Party is gradually taking up the majority across the Congress as at today. And you would agree with me also that the Congress, as it were, the American democracy, we are beginning to view it from the perspective in which you look at most of our African countries. The only good thing about here is that their institutions are still strong, unlike what we have here. Because the compromises we see here and there, the influence of the president and his decision, ability to whip votes with respect to this whole thing, I think if it is passing through the Congress to getting some of these things revoked and all that, it could be done. And of course, if you look at the American Constitution and how the American laws actually work, the president also has the right to sign executive orders on governmental policies that, without going through the Congress, that he wants to implement, and he feels that the Congress would actually delay the implementation of these policies and plans. It's supposed to naturally help to make sure that the bureaucratic bottleneck is cut short. But unfortunately, we have seen presidents, we have seen people make use of these executive orders to their own personal benefit and to the detriment of the opposition. Of course, if you look at the Trump's policies thus far, you would agree with me that President Trump's policies are quite draconian, if I would use the word, and they are majorly aimed at more of a revenge than elevating the American people from, or bettering the lives of the American people. You see that the politics, the American politics, it's really looking like what we do in Africa here. And what is saving America today, I would still say it's the strong institution that America has. Apart from the strong institution, there's no difference between what they do in the United States and what we do here back home. Because you see some of these lobbying, you see some of these actions and all that, except from the Congress. For me, I don't think that it will be difficult for it to fly through the Congress. Or what do you need to do? Simple. You get your party leadership to stand behind you and to stand behind this particular policy, which for now we know that the party leadership in the Congress has the support. Trump has the support and backing of the party leadership in the Congress. Now, all you just need to do, if you do not have the required number of votes, is to look out for those Democrats whom you can actually sway over and get votes from them and push out this thing through the Congress. And I think that is what the Trump administration is looking forward to do. And if it becomes difficult to getting it done, then the part where the press secretary of the administration talked about going to court, that will now be the final option which will be available to them to actually take in the circumstance. But sadly, some of these policies, what I would have advised President Trump to do would have been to review the policies, review them rather than suspending the aid, especially those domestic aid, especially for the elderly and those that actually affect the African American community.
Now, Chetam, from what you've said, will you say for Trump, this second term is all about retribution or putting America first?
In a way, you agree with me that he has nothing to lose at the end of the day. And that is why this particular administration is going to be a tough one for everybody. Because the president is not looking forward to any re-election. He's not a career politician. Have that at the back of your mind. So for him, he's ready to push anything, to hit anybody without giving recourse to anything.
Now, do recall that he flaunted that he could work with Congress to seek a third term. So I'm sure you're definitely aware of that. But is this a joke to you?
Truth be told, that cannot fly. We all know that cannot fly. Some of us took it as part of one of his jokes and not necessarily a serious statement by President Trump. We took it as some of his jokes, and he's one person who is sometimes jovial and wants to trigger the headlines. And he puts out this comment just to trigger the headlines. But do not also take out the fact that there is a sweetness that comes with power. And of course, we've also seen attempts by people trying to hold on to power across the world, like you see in the third world, especially here in Africa. But sadly, these things cannot happen because there is a working system, there are working institutions. That is what is going for the American people. Else, even apart from Trump, there are other presidents who must have, even in their quiet time, thought about continuing for a third term or for more term as president of the United States. You know what it means to be the most powerful man in the world? The most powerful man in the world. And talking about seeking for a third term, For me, it's just one of those jokes and something that should not be taken seriously, because even the Congress itself will not approve such a thing, will not amend the Constitution to fit in those particular interests as well. So the world itself will even rise against it, because the moment the American democracy is seen to have broken down, then it gives clarity. It also gives emboldens the dictatorship we see around the world in most African countries. And America has posed itself to be the model for what democracy should look like. And if they go behind now to start acting otherwise, then it puts a question mark on their reputation. So the American people would not want a situation where the American power, as it were, and the American integrity will be questioned by the rest of the world. So they would want to avoid it completely. So even if it takes getting Donald Trump down, they would maintain and sustain the American integrity, which they have held. They would all do that to make sure that the American integrity is upheld, and the rest of the world should always look up to America.
I want us to come to Africa. A lot of health intervention schemes come from the United States via the World Health Organization and also the UN. I mean, I mentioned PEPFAR and all of that. Now, what's the game plan with how developing countries, of course, like Nigeria, can deal with this? Because this is a big issue for a lot of people globally.
Well, it is unfortunate and it is sad that Africa has decided to make itself a begging dog, in quotes now, a begging dog in the hands of these people, or in the hands of the United States and the rest of the world. You know, we have no reason begging as Africans. Looking at the deposits that is within Africa, the problem we have as Africa is the problem of leadership and mismanagement. We have the resources to continually feed ourselves. We have the resources to continually build infrastructure for ourselves. We have the resources to actually build development for ourselves. But the problem we have is mismanagement and bad leadership. And let me tell you one of the problems we have that has also contributed to this. It's the problem of foreign intervention or influence in our elections. Now, most of our leaders are not elected by Africans. They are usually prepared from either the US or from Europe or from America. They are prepared for us and given to us across Africa. What I'm talking about is across Africa. They have their favorite candidates and they have a way of making sure that we Africans vote in these persons into power. When these persons come into power, what they do is that they run the policies of the United States or European policies. And when they run these policies are only aimed at running Africa aground. They are only aimed at impoverishing Africa. These policies are not aimed at making Africa better. So when we see these things happen, it becomes a problem. That is why Africa cannot get out of its debt until we decide to take charge of Africa and unite as one bloc. We can't come out of this debt. We can't come out of foreign aid, foreign support. We are relying so much on these people for support, for aids. Meanwhile, we have the resources. I give you an example. Look at Congo, DR Congo. Look at the violence in Congo. Which country on earth is richer than Congo when it comes to natural resources? There's no country on earth as rich as Congo when it comes to natural resources. But how developed is the Congo? How many functional airports is in the Congo? Is there peace in the Congo? Who are the people causing this particular dispute within the Congo? It is still the Europeans, it is still the Americans, and now some Africans are about to be joined to make Congo unstable. So until we have the possible leadership, until we have the leadership that will look at ourselves and tell ourselves that, see, we do not need foreign aid, we do not need to borrow, we can harness what we have there, export it, make money, and take care of our needs as a people. Our resources can take care of our needs. The other day I was reading in the news that Nigeria's foreign debt right now is about 142 trillion. And when you say we are owing 142 trillion, you ask yourself, what did they use the 142 trillion to do? What did they use it to do? You see, Poor accountability has been our problem. We do not account for anything. Everything goes in the country. Everything goes in the continent. So this has been a major issue and a major challenge for the continent of Africa. Ordinarily, if we manage our resources very well, if we manage our resources even 80%, we would not need foreign aids to get things done. We will not need foreign aid to build bridges. We will not need foreign aid to get things, to get our roads fixed and all that. But we rely so much on China, we rely so much on America, we rely so much on Europe to get these things done. And these people will only give us their policies. And it is these policies we must run within the continent. For how long do we continue like South Africans? So that is why we are even having the conversation of the United States stopping foreign aids and foreign aids and how it affects Africa. Let me also give you another example. During the Biden administration, we saw in Uganda when the same-sex marriage, anti-same-sex marriage law was actually passed by the Ugandan parliament, and President Yoweri Museveni had signed it into law. We saw what happened: a revocation of the visa, the visa of the Speaker of the Parliament in Uganda. We saw different things. The stoppage of foreign aids to Uganda by the United States. All these things we saw happen in our lifetime.
Okay, Chetam, permit me to halt you for a moment because of time. I want to ask you, in terms of the international order of things that's been reportedly disrupted by Trump as a result of his appearance at the World Economic Forum, there were some key things like we played out earlier in our reporting before we came to you. But what did you make of some of the things he had to say about energy, about climate change, and just trade and immigration? And the likes, and so many things that he said. God knows we don't have the time. I think his speech was almost 55 minutes at the World Economic Forum. We just played just a minute, some seconds there. But please take the floor.
You know, it's critical. Like this is a critical period for the rest of the world. We've also, you know, from what is happening in the world now and the Donald Trump presidency, some of us are happy with some of the policies he has launched, especially the issue that has to do with gender, because the whole world was almost going crazy and mad over this issue of gender. And when it comes to the issue of climate change, you know, one of the fears some of us have had is the suspension of the Paris Climate Change Agreement by the Trump administration. So when that happened, for me, I was taken aback, and I asked myself a couple of questions. What next? Because when you look at the United States, I do not think that it is the right move by the United States government stopping the pulling out of the Paris Climate Change Agreement, because the United States is the second largest emitter of these contagious gas across the world, and they also contributed, especially the Biden administration was focused so much on climate change, on the issue of climate change and the funding of climate change across the world. We know how important the US is when it comes to climate change. One, they are part of those, in short, they are the second persons who are making life difficult and unbearable and also destroying the earth. So naturally, we expect that the United States would be at the forefront, pushing and making sure that the rest of the world survives what is about to come, survives the destruction of Mother Earth. Earth belongs to all of us. We must preserve it to live on Earth. So the pulling out, withdrawal from the Paris Climate Change Agreement, where he signed, by the executive order he signed, actually it's going to affect the world largely. Because, and when you come down to trade generally, we're going to see a lot of difference in trading. We're going to see a lot of difference in trade across the world, especially the war against China. We also saw recently this against Colombia, where we are seeing reprisal from both the Trump administration and the Colombian government administration. We saw where the sanctions and anti-sanctions here and there coming from the both parties and all that. It is going to be a whole lot. A whole lot is going to happen across the world. The world currently is sitting on the edge. But at some point, we will get used to the new realities before us. And before you know, the next 4 years, the 4 years is here. But before that 4 years come, a lot of damage must have also been done. A lot of good things would have also happened. But one thing I'm certain about is that the world will survive it, but it is going to be a difficult one for the world. There'll be lots of push. The American agenda will be first on the bonnet, just like the Trump administration has stated clearly. It is going to be front first on the bonnet. But the point is, what does all these things entail for Africa? There's nothing for Africa, because we are only more of beggars, relying on them, looking at any crumbs that falls off them, we'll take it to manage our life and to keep ourselves going and all that. Which shouldn't be the case. Which shouldn't be the case. So African leaders, I think this is time for African leaders to unite and start pushing a united interest. Because you cannot be having a small country like Togo or Benin Republic going to have bilateral agreements with the United States, trying to push the interest of the United States. The United States will look at it like one small difference and march on it. Only California as a state, the GDP of California as a state is far how many years of the GDP of the country like Benin Republic or Togo. That is why we are saying that Africans must unite and push the African interest, whether on trade, whether on climate change, on whatever. We must unite and push one interest. So if we are speaking as Africa. I'm not speaking as Nigeria or speaking as Benin Republic or Cameroon. We must speak in one voice. So whatever policies the Trump administration is coming with, it is not affecting us adversely. We are surviving it. We are surviving it because we must, because the entire world is now thinking of their own interest. So Africa must think of what is in her own best interest. Trump is talking about America first. China is looking at the Chinese interest. The Russians are looking at the Russian interest. The French are looking at the French interest. What interest are Africans looking at? We must start focusing on the African interest. Come together. Whatever Donald Trump is saying, whatever he is doing, we must push our interest and not push individual interest that has not yielded any benefit for the continent of Africa. We have seen these things play out before. So we must put in our best interest to make sure that we are getting things done.
Well, our time will not permit us to move on further with the conversation. Chetam, Thierry, thank you so much for being with us. I mean, you always speak up your mind and your thoughts and help us see things from your own perspective. But talking about the climate change, which you were pretty against, that, I mean, this is going to be disastrous for the world at large. But also do recall that lots of billions, of monies that the U.S. keeps pushing to, because of that agreement, so to speak. And he is arguing that America cannot continue to go this route. And we all know what Trump stands for when it comes to climate. So on the one hand, I wonder if we can all outrightly say that what Trump is doing is bad, given his own thoughts and, of course, those who are skeptics of climate change. Well, but time will not permit us to take the conversation further. Many thanks for being with us, Chetam.
Thank you for having me, and God bless.
And that's the much we can take on the show today. We've got to wrap things up. Once again, my name is Morno Balagbogbo, and may God bless Nigeria and the world at large. Thanks for watching. See you next time.